Here we are today. We're proud to stand with members from both sides of the Capitol to take a momentous step toward full equality for LGBTQ Americans and for our country. Our founders, in their wisdom, wrote in our beautiful preamble to the Constitution, the blessings of liberty. Talked about the blessings of living, which were to be the birthright of all Americans.
Using the women's locker room. Faith-based adoption and foster agencies required to place children with same-sex couples. And florists forced to fill orders for same-sex weddings. Critics tell me these are just a few of the potential results if the Equality Act becomes law.
Every American should be treated with dignity and respect, but our laws need to protect the constitutionally guaranteed rights that we have.
Greg Baylor in the Alliance Defending Freedom handled numerous religious liberty cases in states where laws like the Equality Act already exist.
Now, under the Equality Act, we will have a nationwide law, so we will see a proliferation of instances where Christians and others are being coerced to violate their beliefs in order to comply with such a law.
While introducing the bill, Democrat lawmakers talked about making the protection of same-sex individuals a priority over other constitutional freedoms.
We cannot allow claims of religious freedom to be used to discriminate against an LGBT individual.
It makes a difference when any level of government or any corporation says that this sort of discriminatory behavior and action is wrong. It makes a difference. And it provides those of us in our community, the LGBTQ community, with the tools that we need to fight back.
Baylor maintains the bill does much more than that.
One of the interesting things about the Equality Act, compared to the last version, is that it focuses in, it adds more to punish faith-based adoption and foster providers.
In requiring faith-based adoption agencies to place children with same-sex couples, sponsors argue the bill would increase the number of homes available to foster children. Baylor points out that forces these agencies to go against their religious beliefs.
Why is it necessary for the government to force faith-based adoption providers, like the New Hope Center that we represent in New York, to violate their convictions?
He also believes if this becomes law, we will see religious freedom cases popping up all over the country.
This is a frontal assault on religious liberty that we have not seen in the history of our nation. Not only does it contain no exemptions for religious organizations, for religious individuals, like many of these laws in the past have done, it actually strips us of our constitutionally protected rights.
We are joined right now on Skype from Massachusetts with Andrew Beckwith. He is the president of the Massachusetts Family Institute and has been following this particular bill since it was introduced in 2013. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Heather. Thank you for having me.
Explain in particular, what is the concern with regards to this parental custody portion of the bill? How would that play out?
Sure. Well, the way I'll categorize this law is that this is a bill that would allow the state to take, for example, your daughter and make her someone else's son. What I mean by that is that it creates a ban on any type of treatment, including talk therapy or counseling, for children who are struggling with or suffering from unwanted same-sex desires or gender confusion. And what it says is that therapists can't help them, for example, feel comfortable in their own body. If there's a young
What I think
woman,
is interesting, though, about this is that this bill takes it a step further than it punishes the parents. Is that correct?
It does. So it prohibits counselors and therapists from doing this type of treatment, but it also then categorizes the treatment itself as child abuse under the section of law that allows the State Department of Children and Families to take custody away from biological parents.
Well, I want to ask you, you've been following this bill for a while. This is not the first year they've considered it, but last year, Massachusetts lawmakers didn't vote on these bills until late in the session. But this year, they're holding a hearing tomorrow. Why the aggressive timeline this year?
Well, they came very close to passing it last year, and they've passed similar legislation, minus the child abuse provision, in every other state in New England. It was vetoed in Maine under the former governor. So there's really it's part of a national campaign, and they've got all of New England tied up, except really for Massachusetts and Maine right now. And if they can pass it now, early on in the session, maybe when people aren't paying as much attention, they'll be able to prohibit any child in New England from receiving the therapy and treatment that the child themselves may desire. It's so radical, it bans even counseling and talk therapy and labels it as child abuse. So that in Massachusetts, if this bill becomes law, you could very easily have a scenario where, say, a 15-year-old girl feels like she might be a boy, and if she goes and has her breast removed and is pumped full of artificial testosterone, that'd be fine. But if she is counseled to feel comfortable in her own body, that would be child abuse, and the parents could lose custody of her. I think most people, when they understand that that's what this law does, will reach out to their elected officials and tell them to vote against it. That's what we did last session. It seemed to work. We're going to do it again and keep telling these
Lawmakers
truths.
are considering a bill that strips judicial discretion in some family cases involving children and gender-based treatments. State House News reporter Jason Aubrey spoke with people on both sides of the issue.
This all came about after a judge in Hamilton County gave custody of a teenage girl to their grandparents after the parents refused to allow the child to receive hormone treatments to outwardly identify as a boy. Back in February, Citizens for Community Values rallied against the court ruling in Hamilton County. Aaron Bayer talked to me via Skype about the new bill here at the State House.
This is about ensuring parents are the ones in charge of their child's upbringing, not the state, not anybody else.
Bayer says the bill protects the family unit and compares it to the situation on the border with the separation of families.
Children being with their moms and dads matters so much. And so the state should be very hesitant to interject themselves into that relationship.
But Equality Ohio calls it the latest attempt by anti-LGBTQ extremists targeting transgender youth.
This isn't about tearing apart families. It's about making sure that children receive the sometimes life-saving health care that they need and that their doctors believe that they need.
She's not talking about the hormone treatments that Bayer and his group are upset about from the Hamilton court case. She's talking about mental health care for kids ready to give up.
We know that young people who are transgender or gender nonconforming are at increased risk for both suicide and self-harm and are at much greater risk than our other children in society.
Another part of the bill would require school staff to notify parents if their child expressed a desire to be treated in a manner opposite of their biological sex.
My client deserves a loving and supportive home. My client deserves some hope in his life.
A transgender teen's grandparents are fighting to keep custody of their grandchild, who badly wants hormone therapy.
They are the only family members that have provided acceptance and support that most probably kept this child from taking his own life. Excuse the melodrama, Your Honor, but these people are heroes.
Cincinnati Children's diagnosed the teen with depression, anxiety, and severe gender dysphoria. Counselors had been treating him, but according to court documents, his parents pulled him out to seek a Christian therapist. They also forced him to listen to Bible scriptures for 6 hours at a time.
The child has stated, I don't want to go back home. When I was home, Dad chased me around the house. When I was home, I lived in terror.
Today, the parents pled their case to a judge, wanting to ensure their child wouldn't begin transgender hormone therapy.
Pretty much everything the parents say or don't say is taken out of context, twisted, exaggerated, blown out of proportion, and then improperly used against them.
Attorneys for the teen say the child cried and screamed in the fetal position when seeing his birth name on documents, and that the best option is to hand custody to his grandparents.
Your Honor, what we want to do in the coming months around May is plan for a high school graduation. Throughout the summer and fall, plan for entrance into college. We don't want to be planning a funeral.